welcome officially to From Proposal to Big Five Book Deal Without Social Media with Katie Bannon and Oona Metz. I'm delighted that they have joined me today. Before we get underway, I just want to thank this month's sponsor, Tertulia. Tertulia is a company that helps authors create simple, beautiful websites. They launched more than a year ago now, I believe. And it's a really simple process for getting a site up and running in really 10 or 15 minutes. Now, I don't use it myself, but I have tried out the technology. It's quite impressive. They are currently offering 30% off for people who follow me. So if you scan this QR code, you will go to Tertulia's site and get that discount. And I'll also include a link to the discount in the show notes if you're not prepared to capture that link right now. So thank you, Tertulia. I really appreciate it. And now on to the show. I have Katie and Oona here with me today. So if you don't know Katie, she is a writer, she's an educator, she works as an editor and a coach. She is very well published. Her pieces have appeared in the Washington Post, the Rumpus, Narratively, and other places. She has an MFA in creative nonfiction from Emerson College, which is really well known for its writing and publishing program. And she and Oona worked together on Oona's book, Unhitched, The Essential Divorce Guide for Women. And Oona herself has 30 years of clinical experience as a therapist. And some of you who follow my site may recall that Oona had a guest post this week talking about a very specific facet of marketing and promotion for her book, podcasts. I'm going to put a link in the chat to that because it's a really fantastic summary of how Oona has used podcasting to get the word out about her book. This conversation is going to focus more on what happened before that, like way before. But that's a really nice resource for people to follow up on. All right, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to let Oona and Katie take over. And Oona, I know you have some slides to share yourself.
Great. Thank you so much for having us on today, Jane. I'm such a fan of yours and have been on the other side so many times watching webinars, so it's really fun to be here. Well, welcome everybody. Katie had this idea for us to do this, and I'm delighted to be here and just talk a little bit about our journey together as author and writing coach to make this book happen. And do you want to say anything to get us started, Katie, or should we just launch in?
I just wanted to say it's so wonderful to have everyone here and wonderful to be with Oona, who's become a dear friend in addition to my client. So thanks for being here with me, Oona.
Yeah, I love it. And I just wanted to say that the reason I decided to write this book, I've been a therapist, as Jane mentioned, for 30 years. And about 15 years ago, I started specializing in treating women going through divorce. And I lead support groups, in-person divorce support groups in Boston. And I finally got to the point a few years ago where I had so much useful information that was kind of jangling around in my head and about the emotional journey of divorce that I decided I really needed to write it down and share it with a wider audience. And so that's how the idea for this book was born. I had no writing experience at the time. I had no publishing experience. I really didn't know much. But I knew a lot about the emotional journey of divorce. And so I decided that I would try to write. And as soon as I got out my computer and started putting down my thoughts, I realized, oh, I don't actually know how to write. And so I better find somebody to help me. And thankfully, I lucked out and found Katie Bannon, who became my writing coach and editor and now friend. And we really made this book happen together. So that's a little bit about how our journey started. Just to give you a little timeline of how things worked, it was September of 2022 that I contacted Katie for the first time and began writing the book. And I spent that first 4 months writing 4 chapters. and then sent it out to beta readers, and began to write my query letter. And I got the query letter done and the proposal done. And then in March of 2023 was when I sent out my first round of queries. And I remember one thing that happened was once I got the query letter done, I was so excited to have that done. I was like, okay, let's send it out. And Katie said, actually, we really need to write the proposal first. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, I was like so ready to roll. And but that turned out to be very, very good advice because a lot of the agents that we sent the queries to wanted a proposal, and I would have been totally panicked if I had gotten word back from an agent and who said, I want your proposal, and I didn't have it, and I needed to then scramble to do it because the proposal did take us quite a bit of time. I think my final proposal was 60 pages long.
Mhm.
So it was an important step in the process.
And Una,
Uh,
I was
yeah,
trying to remember there
jump
are
in.
two sample chapters that you included. Is that right? As part of the
That's right.
proposal? Yep. And I
Yes.
think it was the
Yep.
introduction in chapter one, just so people
Right.
have a sense.
Yes. We decided to do that because the introduction was in a very different voice
Yep.
than the first chapter. So we wanted to give people, but the introduction was also important in terms of kind of showing what the book was going to be about. And
Mm.
so that's why we made that decision.
And I'll just inject a question here since it
Yes.
directly relates. There's someone who's curious about how you found beta readers, and I know some authors
Mm.
struggle with how to get the right feedback at the
Mhm.
right time, especially the beta reader question.
Yeah. All my beta readers were my friends. So what I did, I have a lot of friends who are therapists and a number of friends who are divorced. And so I asked friends who were therapists and friends who were divorced to read it and give me some feedback.
Mhm.
And because it was only 4 chapters at that time, it wasn't as big of a lift of asking somebody to read 300 pages. So
Yeah,
and people were very happy to do it, I have to say.
Mhm.
great.
And Una, we came up with a list together of questions for the beta readers too, which I always
Yes,
recommend to writers is to have specific questions for the beta
yes,
readers so they have some direction.
that was really helpful rather than just, what'd you think? Right? We
Right.
had very specific questions that we asked them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had a very small social media. I had like, I maybe had started an Instagram account at that point, and I had this really weird Facebook account that had a lot of people on it, but it was somehow I got into like some bot land where it was, let's just say they weren't really engaged people that were going to buy my book. Um, and when I started this, I did not have an Instagram account at all. So that was something that, was a concern, like how I knew that publishers were going to want either social media or a different kind of platform. And so we had to we had to really think creatively about what my platform was going to be. And in addition, it seemed clear that agents and later publishers would want me to have published something. And so in April of 2023, that's when I published my first essay in Cognoscenti. And if people don't know about Cognoscenti, it's a really wonderful place.
Mhm.
It's based here in Boston. It's associated with WBUR, and they publish one personal essay per day. And they're a wonderful team to work with. So, um, yeah, they were great. And then um, I set myself a goal of reaching out to 100 agents, which sounds like a lot. And but I think I had heard so much about how hard it is to get an agent. And so I set myself a goal with each agent that I heard from, whether it was a yes or a no, it was getting closer to my goal. And for me, luckily, it was the 17th person that I contacted, Mel Flashman, that said yes. So that was in June of 2023. So that was a little less than a year after I started writing. So even though my agent said to me, this proposal looks fantastic, it's 95% finished, um, she did have a few little tweaks that she wanted me to work on. And she also wanted me to take some time and try to get some more pieces published before we sent it out to editors at the publishing houses. And we decided that we would make make a run and try to go for traditional publishing in that beginning stage. And if we didn't end up with a traditional publisher, then we would pivot and do something different. But we decided we wanted to try to go that route in the beginning. And I think one of the things that really helped with this book, and Katie's going to speak more to this, is that I knew from my work with women getting divorced that this book didn't exist yet. So I was recommending to my clients, when they asked, I was recommending a book that was written in 1992. And, back in 2000 or whatever, that book wasn't that old. But the more that time went on, the more outdated that book became. And it was kind of unbelievable to both of us at the time, and then later my agent, that in fact a book by a therapist for women on the emotional journey of divorce actually did not exist, a current book. And so that was an important piece of being able to sell this book, was that it was so needed and yet it wasn't out there. And I remember in that time period, just every single time I went away for the weekend or went on a trip, the first thing I would do is say, let's go to a bookstore. Let's go to a bookstore. And then I would go to the bookstore and I would go to the relationship section or the self-help section. And I would look and I would see, like, I was testing myself, like, is this really true? Is it possible that there could be no books on divorce or so few? And sure enough, every bookstore I went into, it was like, you know, uh, tons and tons and shelves and shelves of books about relationships, dating, sex, marriage, and very, very few about divorce.
Hmm.
So, my agent and I spent 6 months getting my proposal ready, and then also publishing little essays and articles in other publications. And in January of 2024, we sent the proposal out, and pretty quickly actually heard from a number of editors who were interested, and we signed the deal on January 24th of 2024. And then they gave me a year to write the book. So then I had not written anything else other than those first 4 chapters that I had written the year before. So then I really spent that entire year of 2024 just chapter by chapter writing each and every chapter, with Katie. Really, one of the most important things I think Katie did for me was really teaching me about, you don't just deliver the information, but really thinking about how the reader is going to receive that information. And one of the particular challenges we had with this book is that we know that when stress goes up, cognition goes down, and that many women in the throes of a divorce find it difficult to read. And I knew that because of my practice and how many women had said that. And so how do we kind of structure a book that's really accessible for people who are finding it difficult to read? So I finished writing the book a little early in November of 2024, and then spent 2025 really promoting my book, as we were also doing copy edits and things like that with the publisher. And then the book was launched just 2 months ago today, on January 13th of
It happened quick, Oona.
2026.
What a
Kind of.
whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind. It was. Yeah. Um, so I
Do
don't
you
know
want to
if we
talk
want
a
to,
little bit about what you've been doing since
what
the
I've
book
been
has
doing.
been launched?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Some of the
yeah. I've been,
exciting things.
well, I've been on, as Jane mentioned, and you can read it in my article, I've been on, I think, now 55 different podcasts guesting, and had a little book tour in Boston and New York and North Carolina, and just finished up my book tour in Vermont on Tuesday. And keeping busy with my psychology today, though.
She was on CBS Mornings.
I was on the CBS Morning Show. That's right, with Gayle King. That was fun.
While we look at questions, I guess just to recap, I think the proposal took you, Oona, about 2 months that we were working on the proposal.
Yes. Yep.
The query was shorter. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
one-page document, less labor intensive, but about 2 months on the proposal. And then before that, you had the 4 sample chapters,
Mhm.
and then we
Yep.
included 2 of them as
Right.
part of the proposal.
Yep.
And then after the book deal, wrote the rest of the book in
Mhm.
a year.
Yep. Yep. And I would say my least favorite part, which I've heard from other writers, was writing the proposal. Like, the proposal isn't fun to write, and yet, I think Katie kept telling me this, and it's true. It was actually really helpful. It was really helpful to kind of hone in on what the structure of the book was going to be, and really hone in on the why, and really hone in on what else was out there, what the competition was, the comp titles
Mm-hmm.
were, the comparable
Mm-hmm.
titles. So it was a very helpful. And the other thing I'll say, in terms of the part of the proposal where you write down what you're going to do for marketing the book, a little secret I'll tell you is that no one checks up on that. so
It's
so
really true.
so you have to write what you're hoping to do, but you don't have to have those things locked down yet. I mean, and you can't really lie or say outrageous things like, I plan to be on Oprah. I mean, you can't really plan to be on Oprah. You could say, I'm going to pitch myself to shows like Oprah and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it does turn out that no one ever really looks at the proposal again after you get the book deal.
And we worked hard on being specific in what you said you were going to do, which is
Yes.
something that I think everyone can take away from this is to make sure that it's not sort of pie in the sky and that it's
Mhm.
not vague, but you are
Right.
very specific and concrete of this is what I'm going to do. And it's
Mhm.
even better if it is tapping into a community that you're already part of. Or so, for instance, if you have an ongoing blog saying, I
Mhm.
will write, I already
Yep.
have, 5,000 Substack followers, and I will write
Mhm.
weekly posts that focus on
Mhm.
these topics so that it feels grounded in things that you're already doing. And
Mhm.
therefore, it's more believable that you're actually going to do it.
That's
And
right.
shows that at least you have a plan for how to market
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I said in my proposal that I was going to do a blog post once a month or something, and I have not. I've done a lot of other things, but that's not one of the things that I ended up doing. Yeah. Were you going to chime in, Jane?
I was only checking in to see if you wanted to take questions or if there's more that you want to discuss before moving in that
Want,
direction.
want to take some questions, Una?
Sure. Especially if there's questions on the
Yeah,
timeline,
on the
because
timeline.
we're going to talk more about building a platform
Yep.
next.
There
So,
is one really upvoted question that maybe you
okay.
can answer now from Lisa, who's wondering, were you doing other work while you were writing the book, or did you take
Mhm.
time to just focus on the writing?
Um, it happened to coincide. Not, I mean, yeah, it happened to coincide with me becoming an empty nester.
Ah.
Um, I am in full-time private practice. I have a therapy practice 4 days a week, and I continued that practice that entire time. So I mostly wrote, I'm not somebody who can get up at 5 a.m. and write before work. I mostly wrote on the weekends in large chunks of time. And yeah, it was a very, very busy year. And I had a lot of support at home from my family, but from my partner. But yeah, I mostly wrote on the weekends. And one of the things that I did was Um, there were times where I had really strict deadlines for myself, but one of the things I did was I would take a month and say, okay, the first week I'm going to take Monday off from work. The second week I'm going to take Tuesday off. The third week I'm going to take Wednesday off, so that I wasn't missing the same clients every week, but I was taking a full day off to write every week.
Mhm.
So I did that a couple of times, but mostly it was Saturdays and Sundays.
Mhm. Didn't you do little retreats too, Una, a couple of them?
Yep, I did do a couple. Yep, yep. So,
Great.
okay. So,
All right,
Katie,
I will speak to this one.
great.
So I just wanted to weigh in from the perspective of a writing coach, what Una did so well, how I knew that she was onto something and that this idea was going to be a success. And the first one, which Una already spoke to a little bit, but is this idea that she was addressing a clear gap in the marketplace. And I think when she came to me with this idea, I, like she, could not believe that there was not another book specifically for women, written by a therapist, and in particular, just not a book that talked about the emotional journey of divorce. You know, there are a lot of books that are practical guides, that talk about the legal aspects, for instance, but there wasn't that kind of quintessential guide for navigating the emotional aspects of this experience. And we quickly came to realize that even though divorce is considered obviously such a common experience that is talked about a lot, there was not that book that was in this space. And what I just kept hearing from Una again and again was that she had so many people coming to her wanting exactly this book. And she finally decided she had to be the one to write it. And all of this made me feel like, okay, we're on to something here. Because I think one of the most common challenges is that writers will come to me with a book idea that feels like it's already been done quite a bit. And so it's hard to build a case for why this book is different, why it isn't redundant. And so part of the challenge is figuring out, okay, what is your unique angle or what is your unique niche? What is it that's going to make this book fill that gap, but still be in conversation with other books that have done well? This is the challenge, particularly when you're thinking about comparable titles, for instance, for the proposal, is you want to make it clear that there are other books out there that are in conversation with yours that basically show, hey, like people are reading these kinds of books, but you also want to make it clear that your specific book does not exist. So you're trying to communicate sort of, well, there are commonalities to books that are already on the market that have done well, but also there's not this exact book. It's very hard to find that sweet spot. And I think Una and I worked really hard to figure out what that sweet spot was and to articulate it clearly in the proposal. And I already kind of spoke to this, but having a defined ideal reader. So this is part of the market gap as well, is in addition to identifying this space that Una's book could occupy, it was figuring out who are her readers. And I think that this was pretty easy for Una because she was already running these support groups. She had so many people in her practice who were her ideal readers. So she already had a very clear idea. And that was helpful because she knew things like what these people's lives were like, what they cared about, where they spent time. And that was helpful in thinking about how to actually reach them, and how to think about building her platform. So that's one recommendation when you're considering platform is think about who your ideal reader is and how you can reach them. That is really the essence of platform. I think often people, when they hear platform, they immediately think of just social media following. And that's not the only way to build platform. We're going to talk about some of the things that Una did to build platform that had nothing to do with social media at all. But always when you hear platform, think about audience, think about your ideal reader and how to reach them. Another quality that Una had that I look for in writers that I work with is openness and adaptability. Um, Una came to me recognizing that she had a good idea, but that, um, she didn't have writing experience really. And so she, I think, came into it with sort of like a beginner's mindset of I have so much to learn. And I love working with those kinds of people because it makes it clear that we're going to be able to have a true partnership, that they're going to be open to my feedback. I think that's a huge part of this is being open to the fact that you're going to have to write a lot of drafts. You're going to have to write a lot of stuff that doesn't work in order to figure out what does work. And a big part of what we did together was figure out the right voice, how to, as Una mentioned, make this be something that was in a tone that was going to be, make it feel accessible to the reader and make it feel for the reader. Like almost Una was the guide and was taking the reader by the hand. That was really the experience that we wanted readers to have.
Right. When I started, I was a little more formal. I was kind of in my
Yep.
you know, my therapist formal, because I had done a ton of I've done a ton of workshops and presentations in a more academic professional setting. And so I kind of was first approaching it as being like this formal, more formal therapist who's not transparent. And Katie
Yep.
really helped me to learn how to be a little bit more real and a little bit more like to use my own personal experience to not just kind of come
Hmm.
up from on high, oh, I'm a therapist, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Yep.
But one of the big things we did in the beginning was I talked about my own two divorces in the opening chapter so that people knew I come to this from a personal and a professional place.
Hmm. Yeah. And I remember that was really hard for you, Una,
Yes,
because of
yes,
your own background as a therapist and so your
yes,
professional boundaries and trying
yes,
to push you to know this is part of your expertise, is your personal
yeah,
experience. And that's
yeah,
part of what makes readers trust you. So I
yeah.
think this is really important for particularly in the self-help space, is
Mhm.
having that kind of warm, accessible tone, even if you're drawing largely from professional experience. Yeah.
Right. Right. And we had to come at it in just the right way because also I am still a therapist and I didn't want the tone to be like, hey girl, you getting divorced from your, jerky husband.
You should write that version too, though.
I didn't want it to be that kind of tone, but I also didn't want it to be like, number one, when you get divorced, you should, blah, blah, blah. So we
Yeah.
really, we played with it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last quality that Una has in spades is momentum and fearlessness. I think that Una just took this attitude of, I am going to try everything. I'm going to tap into my network. I am going to pitch everyone. I am going to be absolutely fearless about this. And there's no better advice I can give writers than that for building platform is trying a lot of things, knowing some of them are going to work, some of them aren't, never being afraid, even if the kinds of people that you're reaching out to seem, quote, too big for you.
Hmm.
And Una, like, you took some risks in reaching out to
Yep.
people. You're like, oh, they're never gonna. But the worst thing that happens is they don't respond, or the publication says no, right?
Hmm.
It's low stakes. So it's not fearing rejection and realizing that sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes it's about just putting out enough into the world and enough feelers out that some of them are going to land.
Hmm.
And just accepting that, rejection is going to be part of it, but that's okay. And to just move forward. So that's something that Una did really well that I think served her really well.
Yeah, I was in a really I don't know how people who are just writers do it. And when I say just writers, I mean that their primary um occupation is as a writer, because I have so much respect for those of you who who are doing that. I was in a very privileged position that I had a full-time job that I love. I love being a therapist. I have a full-time practice. I have a waiting list. Like I kind of had nothing to lose. Like if this book had not gone anywhere, it would have been disappointing to me. And yet I would have gone back to my life, which is a good life. And so I did kind of have this kind of like every rejection gets me closer to an acceptance kind of attitude. Like I remember even with the list of agents that I had queried, I put on my up on my refrigerator, I had this piece of paper so I could keep track, and it said agents who I haven't heard from yet, and there was a list. And then the ones who rejected me, I wrote agents who missed out on a good thing and then
Yeah.
made that list rather than like agents who rejected me. It's
Uh-huh.
agents who missed out on a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I knew a ton of therapists. I do know a ton of therapists. At the time I was writing the book, I knew very, very few writers, but I just tapped into every single writer I could think of. And I went back to my college days and I graduated from college in 1989, so it was a while ago. But you know, the way that I ended up getting my agent was that I remembered that on my freshman hall, there was a guy, and I had this vague memory that his father had a literary agency. And I have not talked to him in, since a year after we graduated, since 1990. But I just called him up because why not? And it turns out he now has the literary agency. And so um, he's not my agent, but one of the agents there is. And so it was that kind of thing of just like, why not?
Yeah.
The worst thing that he can do is say no. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else you want to say about this, Katie?
I think that's it.
Okay. In terms of the proposal, um, and developing a platform when you don't have much social media, you can see here on the left side of the screen, starting with the potential readers who are most likely to buy the book, going all the way down to the people who might buy the book, but they're the least likely to buy the book. That would be my friends. And my friends were wonderful. They bought the book. Several of my friends had to inform their spouse that they were buying the book so that their spouse wasn't surprised to see a divorce book on the coffee table. Um, but but we knew that, and this is like think where we had to use some creativity. We knew that women getting divorced were going to be the primary supports, the primary readers and buyers of this book. But we really wanted to think about who else. And one of the things we thought about was therapists, and that has really come true.
Mhm.
I've heard from so many therapists who say they've recommended this book to their clients. I had a woman approach me recently who said at an event, and she said, my therapist and I are reading your book together. Week by week, we read one chapter together. So we knew that therapists would also be a good idea. And then also, who else works with people getting divorced? Well, they usually have a divorce attorney, they have a mediator, and something called a certified divorce financial analyst. So how could we also tap into all of those people who, frankly, don't know that much about the emotional side of divorce and might like to have a book to hand to their clients who are crying in their office? Um, and then we also thought about clergy members, and those might be somebody who people are coming to when they're getting divorced. And then also friends and family of people getting divorced who want to support them and don't know how. And one of the things I've been surprised about is how many people have told me, I bought this book for my friend. I bought this book for my aunt who's going through a divorce, or people who contact me and say, I was gifted this book and it's been really helpful. So that was another just platform idea. And then, of course, my friends who I a million times said, you know how important pre-orders are, right? Have you gotten your book yet? So, um, on the right-hand side, kind of related to the left-hand side, um, I think really thinking about, in addition to Facebook and Instagram, and I realize I didn't put in here Substack and Medium, but you kind of get the point, all of the different social media channels that somebody can have. I also really thought about my professional organizations and what are the professional organizations that I belong to that, for instance, like I am on a listserv of many, many different professional organizations related to therapy. And so how could I kind of leverage the listserv to tell people about what I was doing or about the book? I also have it now in my email signature. So every time I even go to a listserv and say, I'm looking for a therapist for a 53-year-old woman in St. Louis, um, you know, please let me know. My email signature has my book, and I could make that happen well before the book was actually out in the world. So that's just another way of kind of being creative. Um, and the other thing I did, which I got this hint from a friend, was that I started a Psychology Today blog. And for any of you who are out there and have anything that you're writing that has to do with any aspect of psychology, you don't have to be a psychologist. I'm a social worker, but I think they even have people who are not therapists on there. Um, you can apply to write a Psychology Today blog. And the really, really nice thing about it is that you control when your blog posts drop with them, but then they have a very big platform that it will be distributed to a very large number of people. So, for instance, my friend gave me this hint. On the week that my book came out, I had 5 blog posts ready to go: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and one dropped every single day in Psychology Today. And in Psychology Today, they allow you to also have a link to your book. So that was a really, that was also a really great idea. And the other thing that did, and the essays that I published did, was it also helps me to figure out what people are interested in. So I had a blog post about how to tell your kids you're getting divorced, and I thought that was going to be really popular, that people would really want the nuts and bolts of that. That's my least popular blog post. The most popular one is how to decide whether you're getting divorced or not. So that's just really good information for me in terms of future essays I might want to write, to kind of look at that data. Um, and then in terms of reaching therapists, also presenting at conferences, which I've done a lot of, and building my newsletter, which has been really good to do and helpful. And then also thinking about LinkedIn. Um, and figuring out where to write essays and articles. And and then I also just want to say that I really tapped into all my different alumni associations. And so I went to my high school reunion this year. On Tuesday, I did a book event in my hometown, and 6 of my high school friends came to that, which was really nice. Um, I really tapped in. I went to Wesleyan and I really tapped into my college community and the Alumni Association. I wrote to the Wesleyan magazine and I said, you have to put me in the magazine. I have this book coming out. And they finally said they would. So that's coming out next month. My high school also has a Facebook page, so I was able to put it on there. And then my graduate school, I also wrote to my graduate school and said, I want you to, put me in the magazine. And I was just in the Simmons alumni news recently with my book. And then the last thing I'll say, or the second to last thing I'll say, is the writing community and how important it is to really develop a writing community and to really be generous to other people in the writing community, because writers are big supporters, really big supporters of other writers. And so figuring out how to be a good literary citizen, I think that's a really actually important part of social media, is how do you connect to other writers in whatever way you can. And then I send out a ton of holiday cards. And this year my book came out on January 13th. So I usually don't write a note, but I wrote a note to every single person about, hi, and I hope to see you at this event or this, depending on where they live. I told them about my events and sent tons and tons of holiday cards to people, some people who haven't heard from me in a long time. So those are all just different ideas for platforms. Anything you want to add to that, Katie?
I'm just reflecting as you're talking on the idea that so many of these connections, these were really high quality leads, right? It
Hmm.
wasn't so much about numbers, like
Right,
tons of thousands of people all at once,
right.
but it was reaching people who you already had some, in many cases, personal connections with.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes people go straight for numbers, which is why they go straight for social media.
Hmm.
But with a book like this, where it's so much about like word of mouth,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And it's dealing with a topic that can be really taboo. And so it's finding that kind of like trusted network that
Hmm.
can then tap into their own trusted networks and then have things grow that way.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thought that came into my mind is thinking about building your platform and different networks to tap into it. It reminded me of at your wedding where you have people from all different parts of your life
Hmm.
in one
Hmm.
space.
Hmm.
And that feeling, ironically, I'm talking about weddings, Una.
Right, right,
But
right.
but like thinking about
Hmm.
all different parts of your life. Who are the people you've made connections with? What are the
Hmm.
communities that you've been part of? And
Yeah.
again, just being relentless and reaching out and just seeing it as what do I have to lose?
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Yep. Great. Um, do we have any questions at this point, Jane, or should we keep going?
Oh, there are so many questions, but you should
Okay.
keep going for now.
Okay. Okay. I think we only have 2 slides left.
Yeah.
One of the points I really wanted to make today is about essays that are smaller essays that are related to your book, and um, and the unpredictability of what can happen, and the importance of really um, going for a variety of different kinds of publications. So I just wanted to give this example that, and again, this Time article, so Time magazine published an excerpt of my book on the day my book came out, which is like, oh my God, a total dream come true. And once again, this 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 opportunity really came from a personal connection. It was somebody who had become friends with my mother many, many years ago. And I was friends with her on Facebook, and I saw on Facebook that she was writing for Time. And so I, I basically messaged her on Facebook and said, hi, remember me? Um, so we think of Time Magazine as being this huge, publication, and so many people read it and so on and so forth. And it is. And yet, this article, this excerpt that happened in Time, it's very hard to know how many people read it, but the reaction that I got from it, what I heard about it, was almost nothing. So I didn't hear from anybody who said, I read your article, or maybe one person who said, I read your article in Time, and therefore, I have other questions, or I want to buy your book, or anything like that. Um, and meanwhile, the first essay that I ever wrote in my life was that I ever published was this one, Why Don't We Really Talk About Divorce, which again was in Cognoscenti, which is this, relatively small kind of local um, publication here in Boston. And when that um, when that essay hit in April of 2023, what ended up happening is NPR picked it up and put it on their Facebook page, and it exploded. It really took off. And there were like, I remember because I was going to this event, and it was taking off, and I was like trying to get ready to go to this event, but I kept checking NPR, and it was like, oh my God, there's 100 comments. Oh my God, there's 400 comments. And I'm like, I gotta brush my teeth. Oh my God, there's 600 comments. And and then driving there, and I can't drive and look, and but what's happening? And it was, and it wasn't like majorly viral. It didn't go to millions of comments or anything, but for me, and I think for a lot of people who read it, it was like a mini viral thing. And I think it really helped solidify. I mean, that was the publication, that was the essay that came out that then led my agent to say, oh, okay, well, this is getting traction. Maybe we should take her on. Um, and at this point, I have now written for Cognoscenti 5 times. They've published 5 essays of mine, and I've made a relationship with them. And some of my other essays have gotten onto NPR that I've done with them. And then one of the editors there wanted me to be on Morning Edition, so we did a radio essay together. They put together a panel at City Space in Boston last month, and with some other writers, and included me. And so they've become a really wonderful outlet to work with, and they're small. Um, but they have made a big difference. And I've heard from so many people who read that, mostly clients, but people also who read that essay and then wanted to become a client, or read that essay and then were waiting for my book to come out. So um, that's what I want to say about that. Do you have things you want to say about that, Katie?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. All righty. So here's a little bit about how you can get in touch with us. And we're both on Instagram, and Katie has an amazing newsletter. If you don't know, if you don't already subscribe, I love reading your newsletter, just great little tips about writing. And then you always follow it up with where you can submit your work, which is so great. That's always your third tip of like, who's open for submission right now. I have a newsletter as well. And if you are interested in my book, or if you have a friend going through divorce, I would encourage you. It's called Unhitched, The Essential Divorce Guide for Women. And it's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And but hopefully you can get it at your local bookstore, because we need to support local bookstores.
Yes.
So yeah. And we would love to open it up to all kinds of questions. So thank you so
Terrific.
much.
Thank you both. That was so insightful. Um, and more insights are to come, I suspect, with these questions. So, the top voted question at the moment is from Erin, who asks, when beginning to publish in additional places, can you describe how much was led by you? How much was it assistance from an agent or your agent? How much was assistance from your publisher? Or maybe Katie helped you um, to get that, whatever you did to get that publicity and exposure. So I think they're trying to figure out, Aaron and others are interested in knowing how much were you directing this effort versus getting others making suggestions.
Sorry, once the book was published? Is that
Yes, yes.
okay? Okay.
Well, I'm sure,
Um,
I know you did some things prior as well, but
yes. Yep.
whatever was involved in the marketing and promotion to spread the word.
Yeah. I would say it was primarily me. Um, I was published by Gallery Books, which is an imprint of Simon and Schuster, and they do have a publicist and a marketer that was assigned to me. And I think that, what will I say? Traditional publishers tend to spend a lot of time, effort, and money on celebrities and big name books. And so my publicist at Simon and Schuster got me the TV spot on CBS Morning Show, and they got me 3 out of the 55 podcasts. Eventually, I kept hoping, they kept saying that they were going to do more and more and more. And eventually I got so frustrated that it wasn't happening, that I hired a woman who used to work in PR and also works in the divorce space to pitch articles for me and podcasts, and she did an amazing job. So I would say it was a combination of me really beating the bushes and this publicist that I paid. So yeah.
I know someone is typing the question in right now. If they haven't already, who they want to know who you
Who is it?
used. Yeah.
Yes. She is not a publicist by, it's a side gig that she does. I will tell you her name, and it's a wonderful organization that she runs. Her name is Olivia Howell, and she is one of the sisters that runs Fresh Starts Registry. And she's absolutely wonderful. I would say her real expertise is in publicity for divorce. Those are all the people that she knows. So she
Okay.
used to be in PR. Now she
Okay.
runs this organization about divorce and did this kind of on the
Okay.
side for me. So I don't
But
know that she would know all the
right.
topics.
But I think that's really interesting that you chose someone who really understands your community. And that, frankly, was
Yes.
probably more important in the end
Yes,
than choosing some
absolutely.
sort of high-powered book publicist who may have never before
Right.
promoted a book on this topic.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Yep.
But Una,
Yep.
before the book was published, you also did a lot of legwork on your own.
Yes, I did. I did a ton, a ton.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, a lot of that involved publishing smaller pieces, sending out smaller pieces, essays and articles, and doing the Psychology Today blog and
Mhm.
getting on all those podcasts, and yeah, so a ton.
Yeah. I mean, part of that earlier question, I think there was a bit of a logical problem with it because it asked how much did your agent and publisher help you before you secured the book deal? But it's
Hmm.
you we're
Right.
not going to
The
help
publisher
you
doesn't.
for yeah,
Right.
before that.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
And
you did.
my agent didn't, I mean, I think different agents are different. I think my agent's real strength was that she knew who the editors were,
Mhm.
like really, really knew in in-depth way who the editors were, but she hasn't really gotten me too many other
Yeah.
kinds of opportunities.
And I'll just add for people who are curious, I find that your experience is the norm. Um,
Hmm.
it would
Yep.
surprise me if you said, "Oh, I just sat back and it all happened." You know?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh yeah, every person now, all my new writing friends. Yeah, this is the next thing I'm going to do is start a support group for people, for writers who are hoping that their publicist is going to do something for them.
Right. There's also someone in the chat saying, there's a lot of scams out there right now related
Oh
to
my God.
promotion and publicity. I mean, I think we all know, anyone who has a book knows this because you get the emails every day about the people who are going to help you in their book club or, you know.
Yes, I would say I get 5 a day at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
5
it's
scam
bad.
emails a day.
It's bad.
And it's pretty easy to recognize them because now they're really all written by AI, and
Yeah,
sometimes they're really sloppy, like they write to other people
right.
other than me, or they say, "Dear Una, I really love I got one today about my fiction book,
Oh,
how much they love my fiction book."
yeah,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
write fiction, so.
Whew. Okay, so next question is from Dorothy. Uh, if there aren't any similar books out there, like for your comp section,
Mhm.
how do you deal with not having comp titles?
Mm-hmm. You want to speak to this one, Katie?
Yeah, I think sometimes what writers get wrong is they look for comp titles that are too similar just in terms of the topic.
Mhm.
But what we actually looked for with Una is what are the kinds of readers who are also going to read her book that have a similar sensibility or a similar approach or voice or structure. So you can draw on other similarities other than just the topic. And that's what we
Mm-hmm.
did. Like we had books that were not, I mean, because, the divorce book like yours did not exist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Remind me, like what can you give examples of like the
Yeah,
kinds of there's one on narcissism, maybe.
yep, and one on
Yeah.
grief. We had
Yeah.
those were kind of the comp books. I mean, there were a couple of divorce ones, but then like books on grief.
Uh,
So, I mean, I think if there's 0 comp books, then maybe you have a problem, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think there's ways to find comparable books,
Hmm.
as Katie's detailing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point, Katie, that sometimes people get too wrapped up in having it so well matched.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But it doesn't have to be hitting all of the exact same topics or points or the same structure, the same voice.
hmm hmm
Right.
And in fact, I like to have comparable titles where each comparable is doing something different
Yeah.
Hmm.
slightly. So
Hmm.
one is showing more of a structural parallel, one is showing more of a similarity in voice, etc. I feel that way about memoir too,
Yeah.
Hmm.
actually.
One of the things that was surprising to me is that I've heard so many times from Jane and Katie and so many others that comps need to be within the last 5 years. And so we made all of my comps in the last 5 years when we gave the proposal to my agent. And when my agent looked at the proposal and was going to give it to the editors, she revised, that was the one section that she really revised, and she used old comps. So,
I'm
you
so
know,
glad I'm so glad you said that
uh-huh,
because it's been my argument for years that agents put in these really impossible to meet um,
right.
requirements for comps that the
Yeah.
industry doesn't themselves use.
Right, right. So she was like, you should use this book on grief that's from, whatever. It was like 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like, but 20 years old? She was like, well, it's a really, really good seller. It's sold
Yeah.
really, really well. One
Right.
of the comps we used was a self-help workbook for women, a self-esteem workbook for women. It didn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with divorce, but it sold incredibly well, and it was for women. And my
Yeah.
book has um, some exercises in it. So we used
Yeah.
that.
I'll mention one other brief case study and then we'll get back to Q&A. I heard this discussed by someone at Simon and Schuster, in fact, when they were
Hmm.
acquiring a cookbook. And it was a comprehensive cookbook about Taiwanese food.
Hmm.
And there really wasn't much on on that culture, that cuisine, that country. And so they couldn't say, here's how other Taiwanese cooking books have performed, given that there weren't
Right.
any. But they were able to point to, here's how the population has grown, or here's where it exists. Here are the additional communities. Here's why we think there's a growing need and readership for the book. And they were also able to say this will be the first comprehensive book of its kind. Like you
Hmm.
can have a first mover advantage. I don't
Hmm.
often recommend that for proposals, but in this case, it was really actually true.
Hmm.
And when you combine that with the trend information, it helps the publisher see, this could be a real opportunity for us. But that's
Right.
rare. Like
Yeah.
pickleball, like if you were able to get in on the pickleball
Yeah. The
before it
first pickleball
exploded,
book.
right,
Right,
right.
right, right. Yeah.
Okay, so next question comes from Katie, and this is apparently one of your pals, Una, Katie
Yeah.
Borum, who's authored several
Oh,
books.
hi, Katie. She was my conversation partner in New York. She's
Ah, very
fabulous.
nice. Okay, so she has written books with academic presses, but she wants to do the next one with an agent and a commercial house.
Hmm.
So she's curious about your agent search. Now, you had an acquaintance there, a relationship. She's
Hmm.
wondering, did you come up with a list of potential agents in the first place? And then how did you do that?
Yes, I used Query Tracker, um, and which is a great website and a great way to keep track of the agents that you've queried. I also went, again, this was part of my bookstore research. It's a little bit time consuming, but I would go into the bookstore and look in the acknowledgments of books that I really liked that had anything to do with mine. Um, and or similar topics, like my agent, she had been the agent for a book about anxiety, a nonfiction book about anxiety written by a psychiatrist. And so I was looking at other kind of books, nonfiction books by therapists about a topic. And then I would look in the acknowledgments, and people always thank their agent in the
Mhm.
acknowledgments. And then I would make a little note of that. So that's another way I did it. And then Query Tracker was really
Yeah,
helpful.
great. Rilla is wondering, Katie, did you help edit the entire book, or was your involvement limited to the chapters in the proposal?
Entire book.
Twice.
Twice.
Yeah, I know this book backwards and forwards.
Yeah, yeah. First, we did it chapter by chapter. She
Yeah.
edited each chapter individually, and I actually just went right in order. Like I really wrote chapter one, chapter two,
Hmm.
right in order. And then when we were finished with the whole thing, then Katie edited the whole book. And that turned out to be really helpful because they really expected when I got to Gallery Books, they really expected that it was going to be completely
Mm,
edited. And they did very little editing after that. It was in very good shape by the time we got it to them.
yeah. I know we're at the top of the hour, but are you okay to keep going for a little
Yeah,
bit?
Yeah.
Because we have
yeah,
some more
we have time.
popular questions.
Great.
Um, Catherine's wondering who pays for book tours when you're going out of town? Is it you or is it the publisher? And if you guys can't answer
Yes.
this, I certainly can.
Oh, I certainly can. Yes, 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 yes. Um, yes, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to go on book tour and it's going to be wonderful and they're going to pay for it. And no, they said that my publisher said they would pay for me to go on tour if I could guarantee selling 200 books. And
Oh,
then there's just no chance.
yeah.
So I went on book tour to places where I could drive to. When I went to New York to be on Good Morning on the Today Show, the morning show with Gail King, they did pay for my transportation and 2 nights of hotel for that because they had set that up. But every other book tour
Yeah.
event I went on, and I was able to find an organization to fund my trip to North Carolina. Um, and again, just being creative, that was that was a grief organization. So they deal with grief mostly, but we were talking about the grief of divorce.
Hmm.
And they ended up paying for my trip there, but otherwise, all in my own dime.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that's the norm. Uh, and but I do want to ask, I have found that some authors, when they're organizing tours, especially if it's like, say, more than a few places,
Mhm.
sometimes the publisher is quite supportive in that they'll help with maybe some promotional items or,
Yep.
graphics, swag. Did you experience that?
Definitely no swag. They did help to set up
Mm,
um, like the one that I had in New York. They had a contact there, so they organized the one that I had in New York, and they all showed up for it, which was really nice. And so they did do the reaching out.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
good. Okay, I think some of these other questions we may have knocked out in the process of going through the
Okay.
previous ones.
Yep.
Let's see. Okay, so this is going back a little bit to the comps discussion.
Yep.
Catherine is wondering about the advice that you should never say that your book doesn't exist already or that it's completely unique.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, do you want to address this? And I'm happy to say a thing
Well,
or
I
two
think
too.
first of all, it feels a little improbable to say that a book is completely unique. I don't know how you feel about this, Jane. It's just sort of I don't know.
It doesn't say anything meaningful,
It
right?
it's not, yeah, it's just kind of empty words.
Yeah.
And also it's you want to basically show that there are other books that are related where you're going to have those readers. You don't want to make it seem like, oh, this is a completely new space. No one has ever read a book in this, because then it's a huge risk for the publishers. They want to
Mhm.
see books that have some commonalities because it's basically building a business case for yours, why yours is going to sell. So I
Mhm.
don't think that's the right approach. I don't know, Jane, if
Mhm.
you have anything to
Oh,
add to that.
yeah, I totally agree. I think if you move into that territory, the reason people say don't say that is because of the improbability. It might show that you consider yourself the exception, which is usually not a good thing. Um, and like you said, everyone needs a starting point for how to find the readership. So if you really are breaking new ground and no one has any clue about who the readership for the book is, that makes everyone's job so much harder, including your own. If you
Yeah.
can't
Mhm.
say it's like X or like it's like Y or even X meets Y. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, we'll make this the last question. This is a pretty interesting one. Which efforts, Una, do you think were the most successful marketing and promotion wise in turning people into book buyers? So
That's a great
sales.
question. It's a great question, and it's so hard to know because it's so hard to know. Nobody buys the book, or very few people buy the book. Not enough people buy the book and say, "This is the reason why."
Yeah.
Tell me why
Yeah.
they bought the book. I mean, certainly being on the CBS morning show, I did
Hmm.
see in my author portal, my publisher portal, I saw a big jump on that day, but that's one day. I think probably what makes the most difference is being relentless, is
Yeah.
just being out there and trying to hit every different kind of venue, to do the in-person events, to do more essays, to do um, the podcast, to go on the radio, like just to try to be multimedia, I think, and multifaceted, I think. And I think there's that old advertising thing, like people need to hear about
Hmm.
something multiple times before they actually buy it. And so I think the more you can do, the more likely it is people are going to, I mean, frankly, this event is a marketing event for us,
Yes.
right? Like
Hmm.
my hope is, I mean, we wanted to do this because we want to share the wisdom of what we've learned. And frankly, to be totally honest, like I hope that some of you, a couple of you at least, will be like, oh, actually, I'm getting divorced or my friend's getting divorced. I think I'll buy her book. So
Yep.
like really be creative. This
Yeah.
is this is a creative way to sell a book or two,
Hmm.
we hope. So I don't know that there's any one specific thing that I've done. I think it's like just working hard at everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll add from my perspective, when there are authors who've been able to do a little bit of tracking, like they'll use tracking links, like Bitly
Hmm.
links, or
Yep.
maybe they're an Amazon affiliate and they can see a little bit of which links led to a sale. You can do that through Bookshop too, by the way, if you don't like Amazon. Um,
Yep.
there was one person who had an article placed in the Wall Street Journal,
Hmm.
which very broad audience, obviously. And
Hmm.
then she did some publicity on Reddit. She did a Ask Me
Hmm.
Anything on her niche topic. And
Uh-huh.
she saw that the niche Reddit thread
Yes.
was far
It
more
did.
effective than the Wall
Yeah.
Street Journal placement, which makes sense to
Right.
me.
Just
Um,
like the Cognoscenti was more effective than the Time magazine.
right,
Right.
precisely
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So I think it just really reiterates what you said earlier about making sure that you're working your own relationships and connections and
Hmm.
looking locally and regionally. And obviously you were on this national show, but you
Hmm.
know, it takes
Yeah.
all of these things together,
Right.
they
Right.
stack on top of each other.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. This has been a
Yes.
fantastic session. Thank you, Katie and Oona. Now, I know there were some people, Katie, who are really curious about your services, so I want to make sure that you get a chance to let people know, are you taking clients and where should they go if they want to
Oh, I
possibly work with
appreciate
you?
that. Yeah, definitely go to my website, which I'll drop into the chat now, but easy to remember, katiebannon.com. And you can reach out to me through my contact form there, and we can set up a time to chat. I do work with people on proposals. I do it in 2-day intensives, where we get a lot done in a
Mhm.
condensed time frame. And also just signing up for my newsletter. You'll stay in
Mhm.
touch with me, and I have upcoming classes, and we'll be talking about my coaching there as well.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a great weekend. I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.